not good at that. So we have an amazing guest today who is going to share with us something that I am so excited to learn more about. It's an area I've never really dove too far into. And so we're going to learn about Crystals 101 from Cait. Now, I know her from her Instagram profile as Sister Starborn. So it's taking me, I have to it's Cait. And Cait, I've been following her for a while because a lot of people gave me recommendations about her location for yoga. She uh, she has this great space in Minnesota. It's called Sacred Space, and it's a yoga studio that I would definitely gravitate toward because a lot of the people that I had met that went there would tell me it's just a place that really nourishes your soul. It's really about the teachings. It's really about really connecting to something more. And that's what I'm all about when I'm dealing with my yoga, when I'm talking about yoga, when we're dealing with healing. It's all about what's actually out there the more. So I've been following her for a long time. She's always had all this interesting crystals, all of this wonderful sound meditation. Just she has a lot of really exciting, interesting things going on in her space. And granted, now that a lot of us have had to move on to online spaces more regularly and stuff, she still is going strong, and she's moved things somewhat into her home. So if you're in the Twin Cities, you're very lucky. You can still do some outdoor yoga events. She's got some things coming up. And then she also has some wonderful online programs. So she's going to share with us a little bit about what's coming up at the end of her talk, but really she is going to educate us on Crystals 101. So Cait, could you just give us a little intro about you and why you're passionate about crystals and healing and all of that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Mary. It's really nice to be here and to get to chat with everybody. So as Mary said, I am the owner and founder of Sacred Space, and that is kind of our hub here in Minnesota that operates both in person and virtual. And that's been a long journey to get to Sacred Space. We started very grassroots, literally started with backyard meditations under the stars and things like that. And so it was really cool to see it all grow. But this next chapter, kind of getting to move some things online and getting to reach even more people, is also really exciting. Since we kind of readjusted after everything in 2020 happened, one of the things I was really able to focus more time on was We the Starborn, which is my online crystal shop. And I do a lot of education through that. I do a lot of flash sales through that to help circulate crystals at a reasonable price. I focus a lot on getting crystals that are soul sourced. So I try to personally go directly to the source so I know exactly where the crystals themselves are coming from. In some instances, I'm actually able to go to a real mine and get the rocks directly out of the earth. And so I'll hopefully mention some places that you can do that in the Twin Cities area or around the Twin Cities area. But yeah, crystals have always been kind of a focal point for me as far as healing modalities go. It's been a really wonderful way to have something tangible to work with in a realm that often is very intangible. I think that the healing and energetic work can sometimes be just a little hard to grasp, and crystals are a wonderful, beautiful way to kind of bridge that physicality and non-physicality element to being in a human body, because there's so much that we can see, feel, touch, and hear, but then there's so much that we can't. And so it's kind of a nice way to bridge that. My beginnings with crystals, I think like many people, when I was a kid, I was really drawn to them. There's something very natural, like literally with them. And I think the fact that we are made up of the same elements that crystals can be made up of, we share kind of a natural kinship. So the interest level started at a very young age from a very intuitive spot. And as I got older, I tried to do like hardcore research and really learn like the technical aspects of crystals. And I think now I've come full circle and have a little bit more of a balanced approach to working with crystals, because it's not all left brain research. it's very right brain intuitive too. And I think you have to approach it with both to kind of get a good grasp where it's not overwhelming, but it still feels effective. And so that's what I'm hoping we can kind of demystify a little bit today, is just getting that we all have access to this. That's the message I would really like everybody to walk away with.
So I love that. And one of the questions that I have, even though I know we're going to dive into some really exciting stuff, like what is the most surprising or exciting thing for you when you are teaching newbies? Like, what are you always surprised? Like, oh, that's the thing for you. Like when it comes to crystals, where you're like, I was more like personally, right? Cait, I was more into this part of the crystals, but what you think is maybe kind of delightful or funny or interesting about sometimes people and their interest in crystals, like what do you think is somewhat surprising there?
Yeah, so we've been running a level 1 energy work training that it covers 4 different corners of energy work. One of them is an emphasis on crystals. And I would say, kind of personally, when I first started working with crystals, I think, anytime you're starting to dive into something, there is that urge to want to know and want to learn and understand and really get a grip on it. And you do that through research and looking for other people's opinions and perspectives and trying to find books and things like that that reinforce certain ideas. And that does get you a certain degree into understanding how to work with crystals. But there is this part of allowing the unknown to come in. And the more you do let that happen, I think the more synchronicities start to show their face and start to really reinforce, why some of these crystals are making their way into your life. And that moment for me, I think kind of shifting from okay, what do I need? What am I supposed to be working with? And kind of changing that focus to letting things come to me and then asking why they came and why they arrived, and just trusting that they are here for a reason. They're already here. Or if you're in a shop and you just you're really drawn to this one stone, you don't have to know what it is for it to be the one that you're supposed to be working with. But if you have that pull and you feel that, and then kind of filling in the blanks and starting to ask the universe or ask source or God or whatever it is that you believe in, why is this with me now? And what is this trying to teach me? And one of the exercises that we do in our training, I learned that very well through my own practice, and was kind of wow, the universe is just wild. The craziest things would happen. And I would pick up some random stone that I had never seen before and then go do my research on it and be like, oh, that's why it's here. And I think a lot of people find that to happen. And so we challenge our people that join us for Sacred Tools to kind of do that exercise. And so I create a custom bundle for everybody that is participating in the training, and I send them a number of crystals that I intuitively choose. I don't give them any explanation on why they chose them. I just tell them what the stone is and send it off. And then they do their research to kind of figure out why might this have arrived, and reading their responses and seeing kind of what comes up for them is it's really cool, because there's a rare occurrence when somebody is like, I don't know why you sent me this. They're like, oh my God, I know exactly why you sent me this. And it's not even from my brain, it's just that working with the energy and allowing that to connect us, and allowing that to connect us with whatever medicine is out there trying to help us out.
I love that, because for me, this group, I think you might recall, it has intuition in the name, because connecting to your intuition and understanding the why, it doesn't always make sense, but sometimes all of a sudden it's just but just trust it and then allow what comes next. And so I love that. I'm so excited. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off? I put in the books that you recommended. I have put in your website, and I am just opening this up here for everybody who's watching, that you can ask questions of Cait while she's here. But she is going to give us a good, brief overview of why crystals, why it can help you with your healing, and how it can help you incorporate more mindfulness in your day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So yes, I just want to kind of give a general understanding for this realm, because from my own experience and from working with so many people who are, trying to wrap their head around working with crystals, I think it can be a very obtuse and overwhelming topic to dive into. And because we do have a lot of information out there that comes from a very scientific perspective. When you work with crystals, it can be hard to feel like you know what you're doing. So I really want to give validity to the fact that research is really helpful in deepening your understanding and kind of confirming what's coming up. I really want to instill in everybody listening how important and how valuable it is to really listen to yourself. I think working with crystals, a really good way to think about it is thinking of them as medicine. And the fact that any type of medicine, if you think of like a literal like medicine that you would get at the drugstore, like it, even though they're all meant to do a certain type of thing, they will alchemize different with everybody, and everybody's going to experience them slightly differently. And so crystals, I think although they're not technically medicine in the same sense that, like cough syrup is, they do work the same way. And so it's only going to get you about 50% of the way there if you're just looking for answers in a book. I did send out 2 different books that I really like. There's plenty of other ones out there that are great, but I think these 2 are really wonderful to start with. The first one that I mention is kind of like the encyclopedia of crystals. It's called Love is in the Earth. And that one I think is really nice if you find yourself with a crystal. So if you have crystals in your collection already and just want to understand what's the general take on this, like what have people over time come to associate this stone to mean, this is really wonderful book to start. The second book that I mentioned, Crystals, The Modern Guide to Crystal Healing, is a little bit more functional. It's much smaller. It's one you could honestly read front to back and kind of get a real good understanding of how to get a basic collection of crystals to start working with. It'll also go through a lot of different ways to cleanse and clear. And it's really beautiful to look at too. It's just pleasing to the eye and nice to read. So I think especially if you're new, those are probably 2 great ones to locate if you can, to kind of help yourself deepen your natural understanding that is in there. So you don't need the books, but they definitely could help. And I think that the way that crystals often enter our lives is either, they're gifted to us, we find them, they just kind of show up like they find us, or there's sometimes where we feel the urge to go seek crystals out. And I think kind of working on a relationship with the crystals after you acquire them, if they show up in your life and they just arrive, to me, that is a message of some potency and urgency. I would definitely, if somebody for some reason gives you a crystal, I would kind of stop and take some time to do your research, whether it's with a book or online or whatever. And then if you're out looking for crystals and maybe you found or read something where there's one that really sticks out to you and you're like, oh, that carnelian sounds like it would really help me right now, and you want to go find carnelian, you could go, shop around. I think it's best if you can go in person so you can actually feel the stone. Of course, you don't have to do it that way, but I think that can be really helpful, especially as you're deepening and strengthening that intuitive response. One thing that can be a really helpful tool as you start to collect crystals, and this is more if you're going to be out and about shopping or looking for them, is to acquire a pendulum. I have one here that's just a very basic pendulum, and you can make these if you want. One of the things we suggest in our training, if you don't own a pendulum, you can take a key and tie a string to it, and it'll do the same thing. So you can go buy like a cute fancy one, but holding a pendulum, you wrap it around your finger, and it's very intuitive based, and you just hold it over the stone and think about yes, and it'll either go clockwise or counterclockwise depending on what the pendulum does to you. And then you'll think no, and it'll move the opposite direction. And then you can use the pendulum as a tool to help kind of take the subconscious into the conscious and help indicate which ones are really resonating with your frequency. So I think I encounter a lot of people, even in the shop and when I do pop-ups and things like that, where it's like, what am I supposed to get? I don't know what I'm supposed to get. And so the pendulum can kind of act as it disarms that doubt that sometimes can get in the way of us just trusting ourselves. So I like to encourage people, especially if you're like, I don't know about this, I don't know if this is going to work, kind of defer to the pendulum. that can be a really helpful tool. Ultimately, though, it is listening to yourself, and that's kind of just like a broad statement. But if you're drawn to something, if you really like how it looks, if it just feels good, like sometimes people will feel warmth or buzzing, or they'll get a memory that'll come once they hold a stone. Pay attention to those things. Like all the little subtle responses that you have are messages. And there's times where you might pick up a stone and all of a sudden you just drop it. That might be a sign that that one's not for you. And so listen to all the things that happen, because ultimately this is just energy. And that's kind of where the bond between humans and crystals originates. It's just that we are both of the earth. We share such a natural harmonic. There is just a natural kinship that exists. Much like when a human goes in nature, there's just something that usually just, it makes sense. It feels good. It feels like home in some ways. And crystals have that same capacity. Not to mention that crystals also have so much ancient experience, like thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of years that these take to form. And thinking about that pure fact that these have absorbed eons of experience from being on this planet. And so when you dive deeper, you'll find certain crystals like Lemurian seeds are said to hold codes. And so when you meditate with them and develop a strong meditation practice with certain crystals, sometimes they say that those codes become unlocked and will help you remember things from past lives and the Akashic records. And that's getting a little bit more advanced, but there's a lot that you can dive into from just the beginning point of kind of trusting and accepting that there's magic in the unknown. And when you kind of stay open and porous to that, tons of messages can come through. Is there any questions or anything after that? I'll just pause for a second.
No, I really love that because, I actually just posed a question just the other day about, do any of you use pendulums? And I haven't actually talked about it yet with everybody, but for me, it's the same thing. It's like, it's just this beginning gateway. It isn't really for me about using the pendulum forever. It's about you allowing to have that trust and building the trust of knowing that when you answer yourself, which feels really weird because I've done that since I was a kid and just always thought it was like this weird thing I did that wasn't really like something I could trust, right? Like, how would I know the answer to this? But, allowing yourself to realize that over time, as long as you start to build that muscle of trusting when you ask yourself a question and knowing. So I really appreciate that because I think that's a great segue of getting into that connection with yourself.
Yeah.
If it all feels a little too woo-woo, because then you have this external thing that you can kind of sort of rely on. Yeah.
And a practice that I really encourage too, because I think, when we're learning anything new, there's always that, usually there's like a genuine curiosity, but there's also skepticism, and there should be skepticism. Like, right. I think that, we're nothing if we don't have that. But one of the things that I help when I coach with the students in our level 1 is just the idea of suspending disbelief and kind of giving yourself permission to just like play for a second. Like, who cares what comes up? Maybe nothing will come up. Maybe you'll leave the experience, with no more trust in yourself or whatever. But like, if you can just get yourself to disarm and like give everything the opportunity to rinse over you, the affirmations become much more able to really communicate with you. And so I think sometimes we're afraid that it's not going to work. And so we kind of sabotage it in the beginning by just being like, no. And, when we're kids, a lot of times we don't, like, I think that's why a lot of us like do be like, oh, I was really into rocks when I was younger, or I was like building like stick people in the woods when I was a kid, and it was just normal. And, we grow up and we learn critical thinking and like all of this stuff that is super important, but there is a beauty in giving yourself permission to literally play and experiment with the elements around you, because there's so much richness there that unfortunately we do kind of get peeled away from as we get older. And sometimes we just forget altogether that that's even possible. So suspending disbelief, give yourself like permission for like a half an hour, just like let your imagination run rampant, like let it just all come in, and then do your skeptical stuff later.
I, I say that all the time. And
Yeah.
so I love that you just said that.
We didn't talk about that before.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. And I'm going to tell you, when I reached out to Cait about this, because we haven't met each other. I've always wanted to meet her. I wanted to go to the studio, but I just didn't. And so I reached out to her just thinking maybe she'll get back to me. And she's like, let me like check in with this. And then she got back to me and she's like, yeah, it sounds really good. And then when she says things like this, it totally makes sense
Yep.
that we would be able to connect and resonate, and that what she's saying is something that I can totally buy into, and that I want all of you to consider, because
Yeah.
the suspension of belief is so helpful in allowing yourself the capacity for healing. Because so many of us get stuck, and there are a lot of members in this group, and I've heard some of the deep pain you're in, and sometimes you have to suspend belief on what's possible in your healing. And so you have to look at all the different things that will be beneficial to you, and maybe these crystals are going to be a way for you to really ignite that connection with yourself, to trust yourself, to allow yourself to let go of some of the shit that's holding you back.
100%.
So Cait, continue and tell us more.
I do like to mention, I don't think I'm going to get a ton into specifics on like what certain crystals do. I think, the books that I provided will be a great spot to dive into that, but I do like to talk a little bit about just functionality and how maybe you can work with crystals in a few different ways. Because I think sometimes we stop at just, oh, I bought a crystal and now it's in my house and I just have it. And that's cool. It's going to do some stuff for sure. But there are some ways that you can, refine how you're working with them, because the more intention and the more, you're conscious of what you're doing with that crystal and what you're hoping it will do for you, the more it'll actually, start to awaken and really light up. So I just released a couple of, I got it together over the weekend. I just put them in the shop, but I have some little home kits, and I'm just going to go through what they are and what they include, in some ways that you can utilize crystals in your home. So this isn't necessarily like, of course you can keep crystals on your person. You can carry some in your bag if you have that, or maybe keep them in a pocket or your bra or whatever. But there are also ways that you can, put them in your environment to kind of just be on autopilot and like do their thing, and you don't even have to worry about it. And then if any of this resonates with you and you're like, oh, I would really like that in my house, I've got them on We the Starborn website. The bundles are $28, and then there's shipping on top of it. And that'll also segue into, I want to definitely wrap up with just some ways to clear and clean your crystals to keep them working well and keep them working on an activated level. So I'm just going to start with, this is a piece of selenite, and I think this is a pretty common crystal. A lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I have that one. And it comes in all different types of shapes. This is a pretty common shape to have it in a bar like this, but it's a really soft stone, so they can get polished in all different sorts of shapes, so you can really pick whatever works. Selenite is a unique crystal, and the white selenite especially. There's a few different varieties, and I'm going to show a second variety in a second. But this is, you can kind of think of it as like an air filter, and it has the capacity to absorb and soak up excess energy. So it's a really great crystal to keep in high traffic areas in your home. I really love the shape of this crystal specifically, because they fit almost perfectly on doorways. So you can put it at the very top of a doorway. So I usually keep some like either on, I have like just a archway in my living room where like that's kind of the main vein. And so I don't have to do much with it. It just hangs out there. You can also put them on windowsills, or like on like the edge of like where the floor and the ceiling or floor and the wall meet, like in a bedroom, if there's, any bedrooms that get more activity than others. And then the beauty with selenite is you don't have to do anything to cleanse it. It's self-cleansing. So it's so porous, it's so soft that it will absorb energy in the room, and it transmutes it and does the whole natural cleansing process. So even if you have it, say, up high above on a doorway, you don't actually have to go through the process of like cleaning it and doing anything. It can just sit there. And you really can't have too many of these. So I would put them kind of wherever if you have one already, or maybe you have a couple, but any selenite, white selenite will do that. The white selenite is a little bit more masculine in energy. I'm going to show you a specimen of peach selenite, which is another version. It's just a little bit more orange in color. Sometimes they're a little bit more yellow, and this one has a little bit more of like a feminine quality to it. So I really love to place peach selenite. If you're a woman or woman identifying, I would place it next to your bed so you can kind of have that same filtration going on and protection going on while you're sleeping. It's really supportive of the subconscious. It helps a lot with balancing emotions. So for women, it often can help a little bit more when you're sleeping and in the dream time, especially if you've had any intense dreams lately. A lot of people have been having nightmares and just kind of, there's a lot of heavy stuff going on. So this is one that would really help kind of create a little bit more peacetime while you're asleep. For male identifying folks, this could be a really great stone to put somewhere where you're, like when you're awake, where you frequent. So if you're working from home, like putting it on your desk. If you're in your car a lot, putting it in your car. What it'll do for male identifying folks more so is kind of help assimilate and rinse emotions and move them through and not let them get lodged or stuck. And you could definitely, if you're a woman identifying person, you might want it if you're experiencing like some anger and some stuff in your life, like, there's no right or wrong. You can kind of position it where you want, but those are two different functions for the peach selenite that can be real helpful just to kind of keep things moving. And it's almost like a little Roomba, just like sweeps stuff up and cleans stuff out. So those two are really like a dynamo pair. They work really well for, you can just kind of set them and don't have to think too much about them. And I mentioned with the white selenite, it cleans itself. Same with the peach selenite. You don't have to worry about cleansing it or anything. And I'll get to that in a second. And the other lovely thing with selenite as a general category is it cleanses other crystals. So if you do have a piece of selenite at home, and maybe you have some other crystals too, if you keep them close to each other, it'll just kind of keep the cleaning cycle going on its own all the time. The third crystal I want to bring up is Montana agate. And this one they all look very different. This one's pretty cool. Like it's got some really awesome detail in it, but they can look varied. Some of them are just like a deep red or deep golden brown. But Montana agate has natural associations with the root chakra, and our root chakra is our kind of energetic center of survival and primal instinct, our safety and security. It's all kind of that before we even worry about how we're feeling or like our friends and our purpose and our work. It's just like being here and being alive and making sure that we're safe and okay. So Montana agate can be a really potent stone to put outside of your home and bury in the dirt if you can. If you aren't in a spot where that's really viable, you could bury it in a potted plant, keep it indoors. And the beautiful thing with crystals is, even though literally it's not going to be outside protecting your home, having it inside in the dirt with the intention that it's there to protect you, and it's creating, you can imagine that it's creating like a force field around your space or your room. Just with that intention, it directs the crystal to do what you want it to do. So you certainly could put it literally in the earth. I've done that with plenty of crystals in my yard and any spaces that I'm at. But the Montana agate can go in any earth, and it will help to connect you with that earth and help the earth reunite with you. It kind of creates that like symbiosis. It reminds the energy of that to kind of flow together. So those are the three that I think are really like awesome set to start with if you're looking to just kind of integrate them, not do too much on the daily with them in your personal practice. And it's a nice way to just notice if there's any, subtle adjustments or changes. You might notice it even through other people coming into your space and being like, oh, it feels nice in here. And you might, like, those types of things could show up because all of this it's subtle. So it's paying attention to notice what kinds of things, shift and all of that once you put them in place. The last thing about the kits that I want to mention, and I'll pause after I get through this little chunk, is just cleansing and clearing of crystals. So the kit includes a prayer candle and a piece of Palo Santo. I sustainably source my Palo Santo very, very carefully from a farm in Ecuador. Palo Santo it translates to mean holy wood, and it's indigenous to Central and South America, and it smells lovely, but it's very important to know the level of sacredness of Palo Santo, and understanding the lineage of it. The same goes with sage. If you're somebody who wants to play with sage, be very mindful of it. There's a lot of cultural appropriation that goes on, and people that are kind of being careless with these natural resources that have a lot of potency to them and a lot of history with them. And working with any of this medicine, I think understanding the lineage is imperative. So you know that you're treating all of this with the respect that it deserves. And I think once we start to get into, the natural resources that different indigenous tribes have used, that it becomes even more important. That being said, working with earth medicine is, as I said before, we are of the earth. So it's something that you can work with this. It's just being mindful. And Palo Santo that is not sourced sustainably is very, very damaging to the environment. It contributes to deforestation. And when you are supporting farms that are doing it in the proper way, the one that we work with is replanting trees every single day to help replenish the forests. So it's a really beautiful way to help their efforts, to make sure that this medicine is still around. Palo Santo I like it a little bit more than sage personally. It has a little bit of a different function, but just like sage, you would light it. It takes a little bit longer to ignite. It will produce a flame, and you kind of let it burn for, they say 45 seconds or so is about the length of time you should let it burn, blow it out. And then you can use the smoke. You can use your hand or a feather and waft the smoke mindfully. You don't have to rush, just take your time. And I usually will lay my crystals out maybe once or twice a month, with the new moon or the full moon if you want to get fancy, and just do a little blessing and a little thank you, and just treating the crystals with care. And they love to be cared for, they love to be used. Crystals have so much energy that's ready to be used, and so when they're just sitting dormant and like collecting dust, like they don't like that. So this is a nice way, even if you're not like placing crystals everywhere, maybe you're not using them every single day, even just coming through and cleaning them up, it shows them a little bit of gratitude and appreciation, and helps keep their connection with you. So that's a really lovely practice, that's pretty simple, and it can help you connect back to that kind of idea of self-care for yourself. It's a nice reminder of, just taking that time to slow down. It doesn't have to take long. But yeah, Palo Santo is just a wonderful way. It doesn't leave the same heavy scent that sage does. I think that sometimes is a turnoff for people trying to find something to cleanse with. Palo Santo it's sweet, and then it goes away. Yeah. So I'll pause there and see if there's anything else that you've got, Mary, or anything coming up.
No, I love that, because I think that one of the things for me personally has always been, my hang up has always been like, if I were to invest in crystals and like really think about, then I have to figure out how to clean them. And I've seen everybody like putting them in a window, and they have to get it in the moonlight. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to handle that. And then there's some other people who I think they're washing them. And so like, I've seen all these different things, and it felt very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you just made it very easy.
Totally.
So, I mean, granted, like you said, you can take it to that next level, right?
Yep.
Like,
Absolutely.
feel free, take it to that next level, especially if you're one of those amazing people who works with the moon, the phases of the moon, because it's such a beautiful practice. But some of us aren't really there yet.
Totally.
Myself included. And so allowing it to just be simple, that's my biggest thing. Like, I am about how simple can we make this so that it's doable, so that we do it, so that we're actually benefiting from. So you just made it so simple, because I have Palo Santo. I definitely have a candle. I can do a blessing, and I can clean the few crystals that I have. And most of them are ones that I wear.
I saw that. That's
I put them on just for this particular, because usually I do, and I can't remember everything that all of these are for. And so what I always do is I check, what am I feeling? And then I check my little descriptions, and I have them in there with my jewels.
That's
So like when
perfect.
I know I'm going to do something that I want a little extra
Yep.
ba-va-voom, for whatever
Yep.
that means. But yeah, I do have a few crystals that could use some tending to. And
Yep.
so I think this is going to be such a phenomenal thing, because you've now made it so simple. And that is my favorite thing about healing, is how simple can we make it so that we're doing it.
Yep.
I don't think that I know that we got a comment here. And so I want you to speak to this, because I think that this, I would love to hear if you feel the exact same way, or if you're thinking that it's more targeted towards specific crystals. So someone wrote, "The crystal is a tool to help you speak into existence what you need. You can use it or not to speak your needs, but it gives tangible reminder of your thought."
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that with every single crystal, or would you say that with specific crystals that that's kind of their function, or is it just a sort of all the time?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful interpretation for sure. And I think that you could definitely apply that to all crystals. I think that it's kind of finding that sweet spot between, like, I think there's the urge to go and look for what something means, and look at your reference cards or in your books or whatever. And I always think that's a great way to kind of develop and deepen your understanding. But like the person who made the comment said, it is like about kind of what it's a tool for you to set intention. And I said it in the beginning, like very beginning, it's like it is a tangible thing. So for any of the yogis that might be listening, a lot of times in a yoga practice, we're prompted to set an intention, and that is powerful, absolutely. But it does take it to the next level if you write that intention down, or if you say it out loud. Like anything we can do to kind of like remind ourselves of the ability to manifest
Mhm.
definitely adds potency to it. And so I think that that is a really good way to interpret kind of how these can be used. And each crystal is very unique, even if you have like 2 pieces of rose quartz or 2 sticks of selenite. Like they have their own signature and their own fingerprint. And that's why, like, I think if you're outsourcing and looking for stuff, it is nice to kind of take time with them individually, because they're all their own thing for sure. Yeah, and I think another thing I was going to mention earlier is that idea of keeping things really simple and remembering the level of potency that comes with each of them. Like one of my teachers would remind me, like, your practice should be narrow and deep. Like we don't need a ton of stuff to find healing. Like these are tools to remind us. They're not like you don't need a whole room full of crystals. Like if you have 2 crystals that like you're really connected to and you are working with and dedicating your time to, that's arguably more potent and going to do more for your development and understanding than just sitting in this like pile of crystals. Like, you know. So I think that developing and investing in relationships with your crystals, getting to know them and letting them get to know you, and that's a really powerful place to start. And then also remembering that crystals have been around before you or I have been around. So like if there's a point in time when you're like, I haven't touched that crystal, or I forgot I had that crystal, or that crystal has a lot of dust on it, or whatever, like something like that's happening that's kind of indicating you're not really using it, consider giving it away. Consider moving that medicine to a new source. And that like transference kind of keeps the momentum going too. So I think that non-attachment is another really important lesson that crystals can teach us. And if you lose a crystal, like don't be heartbroken. Be like, that crystal, the lesson is done. Like I completed my lesson with that crystal. That's awesome. Or if it breaks, a lot of times that's something that I've had people get really sad about, is like, my selenite stick broke or whatever it was. And one of the things I usually encourage is like, is there another person that maybe could use that? Like, can you keep one and you give it away? And like, maybe this is actually a beautiful thing, and like kind of seeing it in a different light. But yeah, I think keeping it's not complicated. And there's a lot of like saturated lessons that reside in each bit of earth that you're working with. And so whether it's a certain crystal or even the Palo Santo, like just letting it teach you. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I think that today was fantastic. I think it was just enough to get those of us who maybe knew a little bit about crystals on our way. And then for those who haven't learned anything yet about crystals, get them interested in learning more. So I am just so thankful for your time today. And I know that you had something that you wanted to come to share with us today.
Yeah. So we are, I mentioned before that we've moved a lot of our offerings, made them virtual. So it's really exciting to be able to connect with people, that might not be able to come to our physical location. So I have a couple spots left. I have about 5 spots left for both our level 1 training that's coming up in November. So Sacred Tools 1, it gives you your Reiki 1 attunement. You learn about sound healing, chakras, and crystals. There's exercises that you do for each one. We have a couple one-on-one opportunities with myself and with my cohort, Ashley, who does all of the Reiki. And so it's a really nice, you can kind of move at your own pace, but you're also supported the whole way through. And for anybody that's in this group, we're going to offer a $100 off a little coupon code if you use the code joyful when you check out.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's available. And then also if you're like, okay, cool, crystals, but I don't really want to go dive into that. We also have a 3-day stay-at-home retreat that we're running at the very end of October. It's going to bridge the Halloween weekend. So if you're not having any major plans for Halloween, which I know a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do, this could be a really awesome way to kind of just tune back into yourself. And the whole retreat is around building sanctuary in your own home. So hopefully you'll leave with a little bit of a sacred space in your own environment that you can come back to if you don't already have that. But we'll have 4 rituals that'll happen on Saturday and Sunday that you can partake in, all delivered via Zoom. We'll have recipes that you can cook from your own kitchen. We have 3 different chefs that have provided different recipes. So it'll be really fun. It's a lot of people from the community who are putting this together, and there's a $100 off for that too if you want. Same code, and you can find all of that on Sacred Spaces website, which I think should be
I put it in there. So
awesome.
you should be able to. Yes. So it's under special offerings, I
It
think.
is under, yep,
Yeah.
both of them should be, they're also on the homepage. Like if you just scroll down, you should be able to find them too. But yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And then I'm just going to add that in here. And does it matter if it's joyful, all caps or lowercase? Do you
I think
know?
it'll want you to do it all caps.
All caps. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
If it doesn't, just try lowercase.
Yeah.
But it should be all caps.
Wonderful. Well, you and I are going to debrief after this, but otherwise, everyone, you let us know if you have any other questions. You can post them below. If you need extra help getting in contact with Cait beyond what we've posted below here, let me know and I will do my best to get you in touch with her. But Cait, thank you so much for your time. We so appreciate it. And because you have all this other fun juiciness, maybe we'll be able to have you come back on and we can talk about something else another time.
I love that. Awesome.
Yay. All
Yay.
right. Thanks, guys.